Am I live? Am I live? I'm never sure whether I'm actually as live as it says I am until it messes around for a second. Nice to see you guys in here. I have my cat Zoe with me, parked behind me on the chair. Dave was agitating for me to hang out, but he's on the phone now. I think I can get away with just reading some Tolkien. I even have the book out already. It's called The Lord of the Rings. Perhaps you've heard of it. This is a 1-volume fancy paperback copy I bought for like $3 at a yard sale or something. Do you want to lay there, Zoe? Or are you going to flop on the keyboard? You going to be good? Yeah, just lay down. You can't do that because that's the keyboard. Gandalf, you're just in time for me to start wrestling with Zoe. She's right here. She's trying to insist on putting her hind legs onto the edge of the keyboard where the enter and escape keys are. We'll see. We'll see. She's doing a little happy tail, sort of up over the edge of the keyboard. I should say, if you guys have been here, but this is one of those things where eventually there'll be a larger audience that's been here the whole time. The evolution of the ongoing dialogue with Zoe about her interruptions with the reading streams will be the stuff of legend among 10 or 15 people eventually. Somebody's going to edit the sound out to do a really good, like, finished recording of me reading all of Lord of the Rings without interruptions. And they're going to be like, it's going to be a real shame not to hear you, like, literally on the verge of tears trying to figure out why Zoe has to step on the keyboard. Why? Why, for God's sake? I just want to read about elves, magic rings and elves and stuff. Also, whenever somebody edits the actual reading out of these streams, it's going to be a shame to lose the parts where I swear and then remember that I'm really not supposed to swear while I'm reading Tolkien. Don't swear, don't smoke. I think I got through. I haven't smoked tobacco since I started Lord of the. I think the first night I was reading Lord of the Rings, I was still smoking tobacco, but I've really been off of that sauce for like a week now, maybe a week and a half, because my heart really won't take it, or my lungs. I'm not sure which. When Tia Dog was still here, she would do the same thing while I was doing a live. Yeah, they both understand this, that there's a focal space right here. Zoe's the one who wants to flop on the keyboard, or the thing I really need to learn to put up with from her is that I love you, Zoe. She's watching me right now. Is that one of the things she likes to do to get my attention is just romp directly into the middle of what's going on. So, like, first warning, I know it's always with food, or if I have drugs out, or if I'm on the computer. The first warning I have that Zoe is all over everything is she leaps into the middle of it, which, like, with the drugs, like, it'll be like I have a spoonful of kratom powder, or I'll be like using a pair of scissors to cut like hemp gummies into quarters, and then like there's gummies and scissors, and suddenly there's a cat in the middle of it. Like, hi, I'm Zoe. Like, yeah, you're gonna end up. This poor cat. I love you, Zoe. I gotta remember also not to yell at her in this passive voice while she's sitting here. It really hurts her feelings. It really does. I love you, Zoe. She's purring and sort of sedated right now. The fleas are bugging her. I gotta give her flea medicine. All right. Let's read some Tolkien, shall we? I don't know how much, Gandalf, you know this book as well as I do, so you'll know what I mean when I say. I think Lord of the Rings generally will work for like just randos coming by some of the time every now and then. I know the radio show was like that. When they were running the old BBC radio show in reruns on Sunday afternoons on public radio when I was a kid in Cincinnati. Like, I never got to sit down and listen to the whole thing. Now that it's on YouTube and I can, it's not as much fun. Like, I actually liked it better dipping in and out at random. There's a really good radio show based on it. I think they did about the first half of Lord of the Rings. I'm not sure if they did the whole trilogy. Ian Holm, who played Bilbo in the Peter Jackson movies, is the voice of Frodo on the radio show, and that's really cool. And the structure of the Peter Jackson, the first movie, the structure is totally stolen from that radio show. The way that they handled the plot, counterplot, and the wizards battle, like the Eye of Sauron thing being an image that ties it all together is actually from that radio show. It's not from the book. It's implicit. He's already talked about towers and watching towers a little bit. Yeah, I have the door cracked so that cool air can come in here so you can hear Dave hanging out on the phone. I kind of like it that you can hear there's atmosphere. You can hear Dave hanging out. Yeah, Dave actually asked me to do reading streams hanging out with him and read like Philip K. Dick and some stuff that he would be into. I just hadn't got like it's a little chaotic when Dave streams with me. Like some nights it's clearly the right thing to do, like to hang out with Dave and be weird and let him fuck up the stream. Oh my god, I swore. Damn it. Chapter 6, The Old Forest. My view count dropped from 3 to 1. Oh, that was two happy Christian moms who were just here for the Tolkien, and then I swore, and I ruined everything. I don't know why they needed to be moms in this. Karens, I was thinking Karens. I drove out the Karens with my swearsome ways. Chapter 6, The Old Forest. Thanks for coming back, guys. Which novel had the line, "He was a Steely Dan"? Is that a Philip K. Dick reference? Steely Dan? I don't remember. Dave has a greatest hits short story collection of Philip K. Dick over here. Yeah, also he has a big collection of Rudyard Kipling's horror, science fiction, and fantasy over here with an introduction by Neil Gaiman and a cool looking jacket, I think, by Gain Wilson. But I haven't had time to go through it. The short stories are maybe most fun and best for these reading streams, but figuring out which short stories are perfect is time consuming. Like I gotta read them again. Sometimes I gotta read them out loud. An old English novel? Steely Dan is a reference to an old English novel. Okay, Zoe, you can't come over here. You can be right there. We've been through this. You can't go lying right where I am. There you go. Chapter 6, The Old Forest. Frodo woke suddenly. It was still dark in the room. Mary was standing there with a candle in one hand and banging on the door with the other. "All right, what is it?" said Frodo, still shaken and bewildered. "What is it?" cried Mary. "It is time to get up. It is 4:30 and very foggy. Come on. Sam is already getting breakfast ready. Even Pippin is up. I am just going to saddle the ponies and fetch the one that is to be the baggage carrier. Wake that sluggard Fatty. At least he must get up and see us off." Zoe is steadily pushing at my left hand. Like I'm literally holding her down to the desk. This is just so nerve-wracking with that. You can't do this, Zoe. No. Go on the floor then. You can't do this. No. I had to throw water on her last night. I think right before you came in, Gandalf. Hold on, let me get the water bottle ready. By not having so much water in it, she gets drenched. All right. It's still too much. So you guys can see exactly how much water is the Zoe punishment. So when I turn around and fling this in her face in 5 minutes. Oh, now she's over on the pantry shelf. That's okay. Except the other night when I let her do that, she had a little space in the ramen noodles and she crunched around over there. And then suddenly she came leaping in from that direction. You gonna settle? I wish it was easy to just show you. Like it's not easy. Hi, Katharina K. How are you? Nice to see you over here. Yeah, I do the reading stream in this format. To keep out the riffraff, like the randos wandering by is fun for chat, but and the mic and the picture and sound are better. But eventually I'd like to edit like actual audiobook recordings from these, sort of. I don't know. I like reading live for an hour or two better than like doing more formal audible type audio recordings, especially with, I mean, Lord of the Rings is a really good example of a book that benefits from continuous interruption and annotation and discussion. Most vintage fiction does. Past like the modern era, the proverbial kids, I don't think they know that the peak of the novel being like mid-19th century. Like it's actually, I think the novel is at its best before Dickens, and then there's a second peak that's like a post-amphetamine, post-psychedelic modernist peak in the pulp era, where Tolkien comes from. But I don't think the so-called kids know that fiction used to be fun. Like it hasn't really been fun in their lifetimes, with very few exceptions, the Harry Potter books. Yeah, I don't know, Katharina. Do people come in and they feel like they've landed in the exactly right place in my live streams? I don't know how much the machinery uses keywords and stuff like that to alert people. Like, there's a steady trickle of people who come in and are like, "Oh my god, this is really interesting content for me specifically and personally. I don't know how I discovered it, but cool." All right. Right, right. Wake that sluggard, Fatty. At least he must get up and see us off. Soon after 6 o'clock, the five hobbits were ready to start. Fatty Bulger was still yawning. They stole quietly out of the house. Mary went in front, leading a laden pony, and took his way along a path that went through a spinney behind the house and then cut across several fields. The leaves of trees were glistening, and every twig was dripping. The grass was gray with cold dew. Everything was still, and faraway noises seemed near and clear. Fowls chattering in a yard, someone closing a door of a distant house. In their shed they found the ponies, sturdy little beasts of the kind loved by hobbits, not speedy, but good for a long day's work. They mounted, and soon they were riding off into the mist, which seemed to open reluctantly before them and close forbiddingly behind them. After riding for about an hour slowly and without talking, they saw the hedge looming suddenly ahead. It was tall and netted over with silver cobwebs. Isengard is way off. We are way ahead. Still Lewis Trend. We are really early. Chapter 6 of book 1. They're just, the four hobbits have just gathered in the second house Frodo bought as cover, and his friends have just insisted on leaving with him. Like Merry and Pippin and Sam are like, we're going with you. And this is the morning that they're sneaking out before dawn out the back door with the Black Riders trying to beat them to the ferry out of Buckland. They're still in the Shire. This is really early on. This is one of the reasons why this is a good book to do in the late night streams, though, because everybody knows the drift of the story. It's like reading the Bible, actually. Like everybody knows. Like they're like, okay, where are we at? Where are we at? Like, what? Okay, I caught it, and my hand hit the switch when I caught it. That was cool. I don't know if you could see that right. Oh, and my pipe's over here anyway. It wasn't even in the drawer. That's better, though. I like it with the light cut across. I don't like it when things look good. I just want them to look cool. A lot of people know the movie, but not the whole story. Yeah, Gandalf. Well, yeah. There's parts that aren't in the movies, for sure. Mostly in the first book, they made the right decisions about which things to leave out of the movies, but you can tell by the end of the Two Towers that the writing team was tired. They botched it on the third one, for sure. And then had to cover with like just 10 repetitious scenes of Sam urging Frodo to climb up the hill. Does it ever explain why Gandalf doesn't get the eagles to carry them all to the mountains? To begin with, like through because Sauron will see them. There's a whole bunch of points. Now, it's worth discussing, for one thing, Tolkien was not a world builder in a modern post-gaming sense. He was a tactical thinker in that he had been a vet himself, but popular fiction in his day, like his models for action movie type mechanics, are books like Treasure Island and H. Rider Haggard. So you could futz the details a little. You could let stitches drop based on the audiences going along with your conceit, and maybe it's not quite logical. You could get away with more of that. He gets away with that a good bit sometimes. I was talking about the wandering height of the hobbits a few streams ago. But specifically, the eagles can't fly straight to the cracks of doom because Sauron will see them. The ring wraiths also are air mounted later. So It's there's guardians, but the and if Sauron has a line of sight from his mountain on Frodo when the ring is out in the open or he's wearing it, it's done. He knows where the ring is. Um, Now, how accurate that is tactically in the moment drifts some depending on context. Like Tolkien plays that a little looser than a contemporary writer would. Um, the kids these days would expect that to be tighter. Like that you're definitely spotting a weird issue, but over and over they come back to it, one hobbit with the ring in his pocket sneaking in literally under the bushes on foot is the best way to do it for a bunch of reasons, but most of them come down to Sauron will catch them and spot them. A little bit like the slow knife in Dune. They mounted, and soon they were riding off into the mist, which seemed to open reluctantly before them and close forbiddingly behind them. After riding for about an hour slowly and without talking, they saw the hedge looming suddenly ahead. It was tall and netted over with silver cobwebs. Most of you guys probably weren't here the other day when we went over this, but the hedge is a serious business. This is like the hedge around the castle in the Disney Sleeping Beauty. They shouldn't. It might as well be a pile of crushed school buses, which I've also had to get through in my day. There was a junkyard we needed to gank some stuff from on the other side. It was a long time ago. Stereos, there were car stereos in there. We weren't trying to escape from the Shire. There weren't there were Black Riders after us, actually. Strangely, different kind of Black Rider. Stadies. Stadies, we called them. How are you going to get through this? Asked Fredegar. Follow me, said Merry, and you will see. He turned to the left along the hedge, and soon they came to a point where it bent inwards, running along the lip of a hollow. A cutting had been made at some distance from the hedge and went sloping gently down into the ground. It had walls of brick at the sides, which rose steadily, until suddenly they arched over and formed a tunnel that dived deep under the hedge and came out in the hollow on the other side. Here Fatty Balger halted. Goodbye, Frodo, he said. I wish you were not going into the forest. I only hope you will not need rescuing before the day is out, but good luck to you, today and every day. If there are no worse things ahead than the old forest, I shall be lucky, said Frodo. Tell Gandalf to hurry along the east road. We shall soon be back on it and going as fast as we can. Goodbye, they cried, and rode down the slope and disappeared from Fredegar's sight into the tunnel. It was dark and damp. At the far end it was closed by a gate of thick-set iron bars. Merry got down and unlocked the gate, and when they had all passed through, he pushed it to again. It shut with a clang, and the lock clicked. The sound was ominous. There, said Merry, you have left the Shire and are now outside and on the edge of the old forest. Are the stories about it true? Asked Pippin. I don't know what stories you mean, Merry answered. If you mean the old bogey stories Fatty's nurses used to tell him about goblins and wolves and things of that sort, I should say no. At any rate, I don't believe them. But the forest is queer. Everything in it is very much more alive, more aware of what is going on, so to speak, than things are in the Shire. And the trees do not like strangers. They watch you. They are usually content merely to watch you as long as daylight lasts and don't do much. Occasionally, the most unfriendly ones may drop a branch or stick a root out or grasp at you with a long trailer, but at night things can be most alarming, or so I am told. I have only once or twice been in here after dark, and then only near the hedge. I thought all the trees were whispering to each other, passing news and plots along in an unintelligible language, and the branches swayed and groped without any wind. They do say the trees do actually move and can surround strangers and hem them in. In fact, long ago they attacked the hedge. They came and planted themselves right by it and leaned over it. But the hobbits came and cut down hundreds of trees and made a great bonfire in the forest and burned all the ground in a long strip east of the hedge. After that, the trees gave up the attack, but they became very unfriendly. There is still a wide bare space not far inside where the bonfire was made. Is it only the trees that are dangerous? Asked Pippin. There are various queer things living deep in the forest and on the far side, said Merry, or at least I have heard so, but I have never seen any of them. But something makes paths. Whenever one comes inside, one finds open tracks, but they seem to shift and change from time to time in a queer fashion. Not far from this tunnel there is, or was for a long time, the beginning of quite a broad path leading to the bonfire glade, and then on more or less in our direction, east and a little north. That is the path I am going to try and find. Oh my God. He says try and instead of try to all the time. It's going to drive me nuts. Zoe, are you going to walk across? You can't get in my lap. There's not enough lap. I'm edged up to the desk. You can walk across. Do you want to go over here? Yeah, and not walk on the keyboard and not knock the lamp over. Very good. See, you have your feet on the outside of the keyboard. You're as smart as your sister. You really are. I knew you could do it. I love you, Zoe. Tom Bombadil was Valar, which is why the ring had no effect on him. Though some of this stuff, Gandalf, like you can tell that he worked it out. So that this kind of modern, I'm going to eat another gummy. This kind of modern level world building, which, like I said, is sort of a post gaming thing, expecting the world building to be locked in and locked down in this kind of epic fantasy. Tolkien is one of the guys who invented that. Tolkien and Robert E. Howard both are a weird mix of killing it and bouncing it with that kind of thing, because they're inventing it as they go along. And sometimes with Tolkien, he it's like it is with Star Trek. Actually, you only it's one guy and not multiple hands, but you can tell he's working out the Bible, the background, the context, the world building as he goes along, and it develops from point to point as he needs it to. In this novel, Fellowship of the Ring, and the sequel, The Two Towers, which he wrote it as one novel, but he published it in parts as he went along. So essentially, they published the first part while it was still one gigantic unfinished novel. It was published in 3 parts, but he considered it one novel. It's clear that he did not work out in advance entirely how the tree ants work. He develops, every time he comes back to the moving, talking trees thing, he has developed those ideas a little bit more and a little bit more thoroughly and a little bit more effectively. And I hadn't really noticed until I read it out loud to, I was reading it out loud. Last time I read half of this out loud, it was to my daughter, Rad. And now I'm paying more attention. He clearly worked out what he was going to do with the ants, the tree ants, by stages, like he did with the goblins in the ring earlier, following the Hobbit. But one of the things that gives away that he didn't have it worked out entirely, like up front, is that Aragorn doesn't know a thing about them. Like Aragorn, at one point, I don't remember how the narrative works. You might remember better than me, Gandalf. But Aragorn sends them into the forest that is actually haunted by the tree ants. I think it's a different part of this forest. And we've already been told he's the king of the rangers. Like, he's been wandering the wildernesses and the wastelands and getting to know all the hidden and lost peoples of Middle-earth and having, like, Conan-type wandering adventures all over the map for years and years, like decades. But when he catches up with Merry and Pippin after they've been actually hanging with tree ants, after he sent them into that forest, he's like, oh, those giant tree people do exist. I'd heard rumors. Like, it's really... you would only notice that it's a big flaw if you're reading it out loud. Like, and Tom Bombadil, I remember reading it out loud, Gandalf, that there's some odd idea that Tom Bombadil is a different kind of magic. Like, it's like this weird, like, pagan and Christian like it's kind of like the thing where, like, crosses don't work on Muslim vampires, right? Like, it's a different world that the magic of the rings built than the one that Tom Bombadil comes from. Like, he's from a different school, or it's pagan, or it's like a different energy field. Didn't he mention it right after Moria? I don't know about, like, because some of the Gandalf, Tolkien will work out this deep, like, world building stuff that he'll come back to in the Silmarillion. But it won't be in all the places where it should be. Like I said, with the stuff with the tree ants, it isn't consistent. When you read it out loud, you realize, like, and remember, Tolkien had a circle of brilliant first reader friends that he was reading passages of this out loud to as he was writing it. And so this world building stuff, he had, like, C.S. Lewis and Charles Williams in a brain trust called the Inklings, responding in real time. Like, it's like having an online community, but it was like 6 guys, 6 other professors at Oxford. Charles Williams was the third most famous fantasy writer among these guys. He's really good too. C.S. Lewis is kind of famous also. Um, um, I do know that I do remember that. I mean, we'll get to it in this reading, and we'll go over it in detail when I read it out loud in here, of course. Um, that Tom Bombadil like sequence sort of stands alone in a really odd way. I think he's in this old forest, right? He's not in the same forest that Ents are in. It's 2 different forests, 2 different haunted, sort of old school, old Germanic forests. Um, but he brings Tom Bombadil back in one of the battles, like one of the war scenes in Return of the King, or in the back half of Two Towers, where it's a straight full-on war novel. Tom Bombadil is like a magician in combat, like running amok, doing like nature magic, knocking down hundreds of orcs or something. But I don't remember the details. Yeah, and Tom Bombadil does not fit right in with the scheme of it takes a hobbit to carry the ring. It's not safe for any kind of wizard to touch the ring. Like, he does this deft piece of storytelling where Tom Bombadil actually handles the ring and is like, yeah, this kind of magic is not of interest to me. I'm Tom Bombadil. I'm going to say a weird rhyme, and hands the ring back. We'll get to it. That's not actually that far off. He was Valar stronger than the Maiar. Yeah. But that is also like the why don't they just fly the eagle straight to the mountain bit? Like, if that's the case, well then, clearly he should take the ring and dispose of it. Like, what? It'd take him like a month to get there and back, maybe quicker. He can probably fly and stuff if he's all like that. He doesn't want to leave the house. He's got a cute girlfriend. He's got a hot girlfriend at home. They've clearly got some really good homegrown of some kind that they're which is why Gandalf wants to visit him afterwards. Yeah. But like I said, the places where Tolkien is at his weakest are the boys' adventure novel stuff. And when people start picking at the flaws in the weave, there's always a patch, there's always a gloss, like there's a fix, and it is like the world building in the Star Trek TV shows and movies, like or Star Wars, like it's but with Tolkien, it's not multiple hands, it's just him, and he explored a lot of this stuff later. Yeah, he gets into it later. First time things come up, it isn't always worked out, and then sometimes there's like, yeah, like I said, the way the idea of the tree ants develops over the course of this book is a good example. Also, that in The Hobbit, originally in The Hobbit, the mountain goblins are just straight up like the mountain goblins from The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. It's just straight ripped off. And then he decides they're orcs, and they're a different kind of goblin, a different grade of goblin. And then at some point he brings in the idea that there's that Peter Jackson developed into like their genetically engineering superior orcs for combat. They got better language skills. They can travel during the day. Like, that stuff is all in the book. It's not, but it's not all fleshed out all at once, really carefully and clearly. But yeah, most of the reasons to he only leans into the boys' adventure vibe some of the time, and it is where he's his weakest. Also where he's his strongest, because the parts of these books, of course, that made them brilliant movies are this video game type stuff. This, like, the romp through the mines of Moria is just one of the best action sequences ever written. It's incredible. All right, let me get some more reading in. Thanks for being here, guys. All right, Zoe has settled down again over here this time. I don't know if you guys caught that. Right, he was describing the wandering paths and the angry trees. So, yeah, this is actually a good example of what I'm talking about. All of this lore that Mary just explained about the history with the war with the trees at the edge of the old forest and the Bucklanders. There's no reason that shouldn't just be clear known history to these other hobbits at the other end of the Shire who were talking about rumors of trees whispering in the dark. Like, this should definitely be like everybody knows. Like, yeah, there was that tree war in the year such and such. And since then, we just don't go like, but he doesn't, until he gets to this passage and he decides to give it to Mary because Mary is like sort of something of a lore master. Um, Later it was said that orcs were elves that Mororoth had corrupted. Yeah, but they were Hollywood is dead. Yeah, I mean, Katharina, it's, you were saying you're Christian. I don't think it's coincidence that Tolkien, the fantasy writer, is very well known to have considered himself a Christian mystic and a Christian mystical writer. And that Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies are right on the edge of where Hollywood falls apart completely in a bunch of ways. I think they're the first great movies that are just bad, actually, for a bunch of reasons. The 6 Peter Jackson Tolkien movies they're great. They're like a cathedral made of cotton candy, though. They're empty. It was one of the reasons to read the books out loud too. Morgoroth. You can hear a recording of Tolkien reading. There's a couple of recordings of him reading, and he's, as you would think, a very stern, very British, and kind of boring reader. Like it's 2 minutes, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm falling asleep." It's Tolkien reading Tolkien, and I'm falling asleep. But he pronounces orc words really weird and elf words. Like he was a linguist. He's really into these weird languages, and he pronounces Mordor. It's like the O sound is an actual odd vowel sound that is not an English or European sound, and there isn't syllabic emphasis. It's like Mordor, like, and he says it the straight, and he slightly rolls the R's. Like, I'm almost there, but it's worth hearing how Tolkien does it. All right, what was I? I'm never gonna get them through these woods. Right, the path. The hobbits now left the tunnel gate and rode across the wide hollow. On the far side was a faint path leading up onto the floor of the forest 100 yards and more beyond the hedge. But it vanished as soon as it brought them under the trees. Looking back, they could see the dark line of the hedge through the stems of trees that were already thick about them. Looking ahead, they could see only tree trunks of innumerable sizes and shapes, straight or bent, twisted, leaning, squat or slender, smooth or gnarled and branched, and all the stems were green or gray with moss and slimy, shaggy growths. Mary alone seemed fairly cheerful. "You had better lead on and find that path," Frodo said to him. "Don't let us lose one another or forget which way the hedge lies." They picked away among the trees, and their ponies plodded along, carefully avoiding the many writhing and interlacing roots. There was no undergrowth. The ground was rising steadily, and as they went forward, it seemed that the trees became taller, darker, and thicker. There was no sound, except an occasional drip of moisture falling through the still leaves. For the moment, there was no whispering or movement among the branches, but they all got an uncomfortable feeling that they were being watched with disapproval, deepening to dislike and even enmity. The feeling steadily grew. Why did you do that? Zoe just stood up and just pushed the notebook she was lying down on off the desk into the water dish, the one with all the lists of movies. There was no reason for that, Zoe. There was no reason for that at all. She's just grooming herself on the wreckage now. Mary alone seemed fairly cheerful. "You had better lead on and find that path," Frodo said to him. "Don't let us lose one another or forget which way the hedge lies." They picked away among the trees, and their ponies plodded along, carefully avoiding the many writhing and interlacing roots. There was no undergrowth. The ground was rising steadily, and as they went forward, it seemed that the trees became taller, darker, and thicker. There was no sound, except an occasional drip of moisture falling through the still leaves. For the moment, there was no whispering or movement among the branches, but they all got an uncomfortable feeling that they were being watched with disapproval, deepening to dislike and even enmity. The feeling steadily grew until they found themselves looking up quickly or glancing back over their shoulders as if they expected a sudden blow. There was not as yet any sign of a path, and the trees seemed constantly to bar their way. Pippin suddenly felt that he could not bear it any longer, and without warning let out a shout. "Oi! Oi!" he cried. "I'm not going to do anything. Just let me pass through, will you?" The others halted, startled, but the cry fell as if muffled by a heavy curtain. There was no echo or answer, though the wood seemed to become more crowded and more watchful than before. "I should not shout if I were you," said Merry. "It does more harm than good." Frodo began to wonder if it were possible to find a way through, and if he had been right to make the others come into this abominable wood. Merry was looking from side to side and seemed already uncertain which way to go. Pippin noticed it. "It has not taken you long to lose us," he said. But at that moment Merry gave a whistle of relief and pointed ahead. "Well, well," he said, "these trees do shift. There is the bonfire glade in front of us, or I hope so, but the path to it seems to have moved away." The light grew clearer as they went forward. Suddenly they came out of the trees and found themselves in a wide circular space. There was sky above them, blue and clear to their surprise, for down under the forest roof they had not been able to see the rising morning and the lifting of the mist. The sun was not, however, high enough yet to shine down into the clearing, though its light was on the treetops. The leaves were all thicker and greener about the edges of the glade, enclosing it with an almost solid wall. No tree grew there, only rough grass and many tall plants, stalky and faded hemlocks and wood parsley, fireweed seeding into fluffy ashes, and rampant nettles and thistles. A dreary place, but it seemed a charming and cheerful garden after the close forest. The hobbits felt encouraged and looked up hopefully at the broadening daylight in the sky. At the far side of the glade there was a break in the wall of trees and a clear path beyond it. They could see it running on into the wood, wide in places and open above, though every now and again the trees drew in and overshadowed it with their dark boughs. Up this path they rode. They were still climbing gently, but they now went much quicker and with better heart, for it seemed to them that the forest had relented and was going to let them pass unhindered after all. But after a while the air began to get hot and stuffy. The trees drew close again on either side, and they could no longer see far ahead. Now stronger than ever they felt again the ill will of the wood pressing on them. So silent was it that the fall of their ponies' hoofs rustling on dead leaves and occasionally stumbling on hidden roots seemed to thud in their ears. Frodo tried to sing a song to encourage them, but his voice sank to a murmur. "O wanderers in the shadowed land, despair not, for though dark they stand, all woods there be must end at last, and see the open sun go past, the setting sun, the rising sun, the day's end, or the day begun. For east or west all woods must fail." You know, it's funny. I hate to interrupt it at a moment of suspense, but archetypally, psychologically, in fiction, actually woods often don't end. They just spiral inward. Like they're and that's like woods in fiction are not, no, maybe in the real world. In fact, not so much. They find missing people in the woods all the time, dead people in the people go missing in the you just go astray sometimes in there. For east or west, all woods must fail. Fail. Even as he said the word, his voice faded into silence. The air seemed heavy and the making of words wearisome. Just behind them, a large branch fell from an old overhanging tree with a crash into the path. The trees seemed to close in before them. "They do not like all that about ending and failing," said Merry. That's what I was saying. "I should not sing any more at present. Wait till we do get to the edge, and then we'll turn and give them a rousing chorus." He spoke cheerfully, and if he felt any great anxiety, he did not show it. The others did not answer. They were depressed. A heavy weight was settling steadily on Frodo's heart, and he regretted now with every step forward that he had ever thought of challenging the menace of the trees. He was, indeed, just about to stop and propose going back, if that was still possible, when things took a new turn. The path stopped climbing and became for a while nearly level. The dark trees drew aside, and ahead they could see the path going almost straight forward. Before them, but some distance off, there stood a green hilltop, treeless, rising like a bald head out of the encircling wood. The path seemed to be making directly for it. They now hurried forward again, delighted with the thought of climbing out for a while above the roof of the forest. The path dipped, and then again began to climb upwards, leading them at last to the foot of the steep hillside. There it left the trees and faded into the turf. The wood stood all round the hill like thick hair that ended sharply in a circle round a shaven crown. The hobbits led their ponies up, winding round and round until they reached the top. There they stood and gazed about them. The air was gleaming and sunlit but hazy, and they could not see to any great distance. Near at hand the mist was now almost gone, though here and there it lay in hollows of the wood, and to the south of them, out of a deep fold cutting right across the forest, the fog still rose like steam or wisps of white smoke. "That," said Merry, pointing with his hand, "that is the line of the Withywindle. It comes down out of the downs and flows southwest through the midst of the forest to join the Brandywine below Haysend. We don't want to go that way. The Withywindle Valley is said to be the queerest part of the whole wood, the center from which all the queerness comes, as it were." P-Town. The Height. The East Village. You shall not pass. Sorry. It seems like now Tolkien has definitely clearly made a couple of references to Frodo and Bilbo not being into women. Like, he's not getting distracted by it. Tolkien was straight. He had kids and grandkids. He clearly understood women. They don't play in this novel much, but when they do, he writes women like he understands them, which is interesting. How little they play in the novel and how sort of homocentric the book is. But he doesn't use the word queer to signify queerness. Like, actually, like when there are gay jokes or gay references, it's not. I think once he tied them together. I don't know. I have not yet been able to get a straight story on when the word queer meant gay, like when that became etched in stone in the culture. Like, I don't know how far that goes back. Before my time. I was born in 1971, so queer was queer before me for sure. Wasn't in the common usage among like average people in the street until probably the zeros. Like I knew guys who were 20 years older than me who considered the word queer offensive. I worked for a florist named Marvin who once acted offended when I used the word queer, and I had to explain to him that the gay community had recovered that word and made it not a slur. And he seemed puzzled. This was in Mississippi 30 years ago, and this guy was 30 years older than me. So that word has come a long way. He uses it a lot. Tolkien uses that word a lot. Right. The wood in a circle like a hazen crown. I may be rereading a paragraph again. I apologize. The hobbits led their ponies up, winding round and round till they reached the top. I did read this. I'm going to read it again. There they stood and gazed about them. The air was gleaming and sunlit but hazy, and they could not see to any great distance. Near at hand the mist was now almost gone, though here and there it lay in hollows of the wood, and to the south of them, out of a deep fold cutting right across the forest, the fog still rose like steam or wisps of white smoke. Right, and the paragraph where Mary explains that the Withywindle Valley is said to be the queerest part of the whole wood, the center from which all the queerness comes, as it were. The others looked in the direction that Mary pointed out, but they could see little but mists over the dampened, deep-cut valley, and beyond it the southern half of the forest faded from view. The sun on the hilltop was now getting hot. It must have been about 11 o'clock, but the autumn haze still prevented them from seeing much in other directions. In the west, they could not make out either the line of the hedge or the valley of the Brandywine beyond it. Northward, where they looked most hopefully, they could see nothing that might be the line of the great east road for which they were making. They were on an island in a sea of trees, and the horizon was veiled. On the southeastern side, the ground fell very steeply, as if the slopes of the hill were continued far down under the trees, like island shores that really are the sides of a mountain rising out of deep waters. They sat on the green edge and looked out over the woods below them while they ate their midday meal. As the sun rose and past noon, they glimpsed far off in the east the gray-green lines of the downs that lay beyond the old forest on that side. That cheered them greatly, for it was good to see a sight of anything beyond the wood's borders, though they did not mean to go that way if they could help it. The Barrow Downs had as sinister a reputation in Hobbit legend as the forest itself. At length they made up their minds to go on again. The path that had brought them to the hill reappeared on the northward side, but they had not followed it far before they became aware that it was bending steadily to the right. Soon it began to descend rapidly, and they guessed that it must actually be heading towards the Withywindle Valley, not at all the direction they wished to take. After some discussion, they decided to leave this misleading path and strike northward. For although they had not been able to see it from the hilltop, the road must lie that way, and it could not be many miles off. Also northward and to the left of the path, the land seemed to be drier and more open, climbing up to slopes where the trees were thinner, and pines and firs replaced the oaks and ashes and other strange and nameless trees of the denser wood. I love that it's clear that Tolkien was a vet. And once I found out that Tolkien was a veteran of World War I, his obsession with the travelogue on foot being geographically locked in tight, like it really is like the landscape exists. He's thought it through, like footstep by footstep, like the whole walk all the way to Mordor. You get a description of the whole thing, and it plays as perfectly believable the whole time. He must have picked that up tromping across France and Germany. Like I don't know, but right, like I don't know much about his military experience actually. Um, I suppose you could just learn to think and write like this, being passionate about wandering around in the islands where he came from. But I also think he might have long forced marches on very little sleep and very little food across Europe are back of these descriptions. After an hour or two, oh, no. At first their choice seemed to be good. They got along at a fair speed, though whenever they got a glimpse of the sun in an open glade, they seemed unaccountably to have veered eastwards. But after a time, the trees began to close in again, just where they had appeared from a distance to be thinner and less tangled. Then deep folds in the ground were discovered unexpectedly, like the ruts of great giant wheels or wide moats and sunken roads long disused and choked with brambles. These lay usually right across their line of march and could only be crossed by scrambling down and out again, which was troublesome and difficult with their ponies. Each time they climbed down, they found the hollow filled with thick bushes and matted undergrowth, which somehow would not yield to the left, but only gave way when they turned to the right, and they had to go some distance along the bottom before they could find a way up the further bank. Each time they clambered out, the trees seemed deeper and darker, and always to the left and upwards it was most difficult to find a way, and they were forced to the right and downwards. After an hour or two, they had lost all clear sense of direction. Though they knew well enough that they had long ceased to go northward at all, they were being headed off, and were simply following a course chosen for them, eastwards and southwards into the heart of the forest, and not out of it. The afternoon was wearing away when they scrambled and stumbled into a fold that was wider and deeper than any they had yet met. It was so steep and overhung that it proved impossible to climb out of it again, either forwards or backwards, without leaving their ponies and their baggage behind. All they could do was to follow the fold downwards. The ground grew soft and in places boggy. Springs appeared in the banks, and soon they found themselves following a brook that trickled and babbled through a weedy bed. Then the ground began to fall rapidly, and the brook, growing strong and noisy, flowed and leaped swiftly downhill. They were in a deep, dim-lit gully overarched by trees high above them. After stumbling along for some way along the stream, let me interrupt myself again. You're new here, so Katharina, you won't know, but when I do the reading streams, I will try to ignore chat unless it's on subject with the book. I won't entirely ignore chat, obviously, like I'm hanging out with you guys, but I'm trying to read primarily, especially because most of the audience is probably going to come in and listen to these later. But I like it when you guys hang out in the chat and ignore me and like hang out. Like that's fun. So I don't mean to ignore you if you ask questions that are off topic, but yeah, Gandalf doesn't mind hanging out. Obviously, nobody else in here does. There hasn't been a big enough audience in here for the chat to get really animated during the readings much, but it's fun when it does. I like it when you guys talk amongst yourselves. It's kind of like being able to talk loudly over a movie or a band and also not interrupt at all, like talking loudly in silence. It's cool. Anyway, yeah, just wanted to brief you. Thanks for being here, guys, by the way. I have the monetization turned off so that these lives will not be interrupted by ad rolls. So if you hang out in these lives enough to feel moved to want to tip me, the paypal.me/Roganautica link is where I'm raising funds to move. I'm almost there, but I'm raising funds to move. You can also donate through the dono button. YouTube keeps an absurd percentage of that, though. Um, I have a good talking voice. Thank you. Yeah, I try to read late night. I try to do bedtime story voice late at night. Yeah, is another reason I try not to get too distracted hanging out with the chat. Cause and also you'll notice like I try to do the reading voice when I'm hanging out. Like I stick to my actory reading voice mostly when I'm hanging out with chat in here because I know that people are falling asleep. Like I have this thing where I listen to live streamers I like. Um, and if they start talking loudly or animatedly or laughing really loud, like after I've already started to nod off, it's annoying. Also, I mute it in here when I cough or anything like that because it makes the levels pop. Yeah, and I think twice a couple of the kids' cat came in during a reading stream and hung out on Discord, and it was cool having her interrupt and talk to me while I read. It was really fun. But yeah, but it needs to be steadily my voice, so I'm not going to do that anymore in these reading streams. Um, where the hell was I? Oh, right. Then the ground began to fall rapidly, and the brook, growing strong and noisy, flowed and leaped swiftly downhill. They were in a deep, dim-lit gully overarched by trees high above them. After stumbling along for some way along the stream, they came quite suddenly out of the gloom. As if through a gate, they saw the sunlight before them. Coming to the opening, they found that they had made their way down through a cleft in a high, steep bank, almost a cliff. At its feet was a wide space of grass and reeds, and in the distance could be glimpsed another bank almost as steep. A golden afternoon of late sunshine lay warm and drowsy upon the hidden land between. In the midst of it there wound lazily a dark river of brown water, bordered with ancient willows, arched over with willows, blocked with fallen willows, and flecked with thousands of faded willow leaves. The air was thick with them, fluttering yellow from the branches, for there was a warm and gentle breeze blowing softly in the valley, and the reeds were rustling, and the willow boughs were creaking. "Well, now I have at least some notion of where we are," said Mary. "We have come almost in the opposite direction to which we intended. This is the river Withywindle. I will go on and explore." He passed out into the sunshine and disappeared into the long grasses. After a while he reappeared, and reported that there was fairly solid ground between the cliff foot and the river. In some places firm turf went down to the water's edge. "What's more," he said, "there seems to be something like a footpath winding along on this side of the river. If we turn left and follow it, we shall be bound to come out on the east side of the forest eventually." "I dare say," said Pippin. "That is, if the track goes on so far, and does not simply lead us into a bog and leave us there. Who made the track, do you suppose, and why? I'm sure it was not for our benefit. I am getting very suspicious of this forest and everything in it, and I begin to believe all the stories about it. And have you any idea how far eastward we should have to go?" "No," said Mary, "I haven't. I don't know in the least how far down the Withywindle we are, or who could possibly come here often enough to make a path along it. But there is no other way out that I can see or think of." There being nothing else for it, they filed out, and Mary led them to the path that he had discovered. Everywhere the reeds and grasses were lush and tall, in places far above their heads, but once found, the path was easy to follow as it turned and twisted, picking out the sounder ground among the bogs and pools. Here and there it passed over other rills, running down gullies into the Withywindle out of the higher forest lands, and at these points there were tree trunks or bundles of brushwood laid carefully across. The hobbits began to feel very hot. There were armies of flies of all kinds buzzing round their ears, and the afternoon sun was burning on their backs. At last they came suddenly into a thin shade. Great grey branches reached across the path. Each step forward became more reluctant than the last. Sleepiness seemed to be creeping out of the ground and up their legs and falling softly out of the air upon their heads and eyes. Frodo felt his chin go down and his head nod. Just in front of him, Pippin fell forward onto his knees. Frodo halted. It's no good, he heard Mary saying. Can't go another step without rest. Must have nap. It's cool under the willows. Less flies. Frodo did not like the sound of this. Come on, he cried. We can't have a nap yet. We must get clear of the forest first. But the others were too far gone to care. Beside them, Sam stood yawning and blinking stupidly. Suddenly, Frodo himself felt sleep overwhelming him. His head swam. There now seemed hardly a sound in the air. The flies had stopped buzzing. Only a gentle noise on the edge of hearing, a soft fluttering as of a song half whispered, seemed to stir in the boughs above. He lifted his heavy eyes and saw leaning over him a huge willow tree, old and hoary. Enormous it looked, its sprawling branches going up like reaching arms with many long-fingered hands, its knotted and twisted trunk gaping in wide fissures that creaked faintly as the boughs moved. The leaves fluttering against the bright sky dazzled him, and he toppled over, lying where he fell upon the grass. Merry and Pippin dragged themselves forward and lay down with their backs to the willow trunk. Behind them, the great cracks gaped wide to receive them as the tree swayed and creaked. They looked up at the gray and yellow leaves moving softly against the light and singing. They shut their eyes, and then it seemed that they could almost hear words, cool words, saying something about water and sleep. They gave themselves up to the spell and fell fast asleep at the foot of the great gray willow. Frodo lay for a while fighting with the sleep that was overpowering him. Then with an effort he struggled to his feet again. I don't think I did anything screwy there. I made a panel pop out, or Zoe's tail did. I'm not sure which. Frodo lay for a while fighting with the sleep that was overpowering him. Then with an effort he struggled to his feet again. He felt a compelling desire for cool water. Wait for me, Sam, he stammered. Must bathe feet a minute. Half in a dream, he wandered forward to the riverward side of the tree, where great winding roots grew out into the stream, like gnarled dragonets straining down to drink. He straddled one of these and paddled his hot feet in the cool brown water, and there he too suddenly fell asleep with his back against the tree. Sam sat down at... I said I was a Satanist? I never said I was a Satanist. If I did, I was memeing. I have my own weird ideas about religion. They're weird. I mean, you know, I'm not any kind of diabolist or Satanist, though. Some kind of pagan, maybe. I mean, I'm not saying so now, so I probably didn't say so then. I must have been misunderstood. I do say strange and complex things, and sometimes I joke, and it's not clear I'm joking. Sam sat down and scratched his head and yawned like a cavern. He was worried. The afternoon was getting late, and he thought this sudden sleepiness uncanny. There's more behind this than sun and warm air, he muttered to himself. I don't like this great big tree. I don't trust it. Hark at it singing about sleep now. This won't do at all. He pulled himself to his feet and staggered off to see what had become of the ponies. He found that two had wandered on a good way along the path, and he had just caught them and brought them back towards the others when he heard two noises, one loud and the other soft but very clear. One was the splash of something heavy falling into the water. The other was a noise like the snick of a lock when a door quietly closes fast. He rushed back to the bank. Frodo was in the water close to the edge, and a great tree root seemed to be over him and holding him down, but he was not struggling. Sam gripped him by the jacket and dragged him from under the root, and then with difficulty hauled him onto the bank. Almost at once he woke and coughed and spluttered. Do you know, Sam, he said at length, the beastly tree threw me in. I felt it. The big root just twisted round and tipped me in. You were dreaming, I expect, Mr. Frodo, said Sam. You shouldn't sit in such a place if you feel sleepy. What about the others? Frodo asked. I wonder what sort of dreams they are having. They went round to the other side of the tree, and then Sam understood the click that he had heard. Pippin had vanished. The crack by which he had laid himself had closed together so that not a chink could be seen. Merry was trapped. Another crack had closed about his waist. His legs lay outside, but the rest of him was inside a dark opening, the edges of which gripped like a pair of pincers. You can't walk on the keyboard, Zoe. You can lie down there. Yeah, there you go. She wants to get closer when I'm doing the intense lower voice for like the suspenseful part. Frodo and Sam beat first upon the tree trunk where Pippin had lain. Then they struggled frantically to pull open the jaws of the crack that held poor Merry. It was quite useless. What a foul thing to happen, cried Frodo wildly. Why did we ever come into this dreadful forest? I wish we were all back at Crick Hollow. He kicked the tree with all his strength, heedless of his own feet. A hardly perceptible shiver ran through the stem and up into the branches. The leaves rustled and whispered, but with a sound now of faint and far-off laughter. I don't, Katharina, sure, I'm a Satanist. Hail Satan. Are you here to argue about Satan? Really? Because I'm reading Tolkien. Not even reading C.S. Lewis. I'll get there eventually. Probably won't want to talk about Satan much then either. I suppose we haven't got an axe among our luggage, Mr. Frodo, asked Sam. I brought a little hatchet for chopping firewood, said Frodo. That wouldn't be much use. Wait a minute, cried Sam, struck by an idea suggested by firewood. We might do something with fire. We might, said Frodo doubtfully. We might succeed in roasting Pippin alive inside. We might try to hurt or frighten this tree to begin with, said Sam fiercely. If it don't let them go, I'll have it down if I have to gnaw it. He ran to the ponies and before long came back with 2 tinder boxes and a hatchet. Quickly they gathered dry grass and leaves and bits of bark and made a pile of broken twigs and chopped sticks. These they heaped against the trunk on the far side of the tree from the prisoners. As soon as Sam had struck a spark into the tinder, it kindled the dry grass and a flurry of flame and smoke went up. The twigs crackled. Little fingers of fire licked against the dry, scored rind of the ancient tree and scorched it. A tremor ran through the whole willow. The leaves seemed to hiss above their heads with a sound of pain and anger. A loud scream came from Merry, and from far inside the tree they heard Pippin give a muffled yell. Put it out, cried Merry. He'll squeeze me in two if you don't. He says so. Who? What? Shouted Frodo, rushing round to the other side of the tree. Put it out, begged Merry. The branches of the willow began to sway violently. There was a sound as of a wind rising and spreading outwards to the branches of all the other trees round about, as though they had dropped a stone into the quiet slumber of the river valley and set up ripples of anger that ran out over the whole forest. Sam kicked at the little fire and stamped out the sparks. But Frodo, without any clear idea of why he did so or what he hoped for, ran along the path crying, "Help, help, help." It seemed to him that he could hardly hear the sound of his own shrill voice. It was blown away from him by the willow wind. You can't do that, Zoe. You can't just leap into my lap when there's no lap. No. Stop. Zoe. You gotta get out of my lap. Now you can't be bad like that, or you will get water thrown on you. All right? Don't jump back up or you'll get more water on you. Stop. Yes, you can hang out up there, Zoe. Poor Zoe. You have to be good, buddy. You can't just insist on leaping on the computer or my lap while I do the reading streams, or you will get water dumped all over your head again, okay? I'm not going to yell at you anymore or throw you. You have to be good. You can lie right here, or you can lie there, or you can lie there. You cannot lie in the computer or in my lap. I have no idea how many words she understands, but probably only about 4. It's all right, Zoe. Man, the Quitting smoking cigarettes. I mean, I don't even smoke cigarettes. I was smoking tobacco in a pipe. Like, you guys could see exactly how much I was smoking. I still have, like, smoker's gravel in my voice. I still smoke a little bit of weed, but, like, I just paused it so I could cough and have a snorfy moment. Like, you guys, if you've been here, you saw it. Like, for when I'm smoking, I have to pause the sound, mute the mic, so that I can cough and make snorfy noises, like, once every 5 minutes. Like, I quit smoking tobacco, even in small quantities, and it's, like, once an hour. It seemed to him that he could hardly hear the sound of his own shrill voice. It was blown away from him by the willow wind and drowned in a clamor of leaves as soon as the words left his mouth. He felt desperate, lost, and witless. Suddenly he stopped. There was an answer, or so he thought, but it seemed to come from behind him, away down the path further back in the forest. He turned round and listened, and soon there could be no doubt. Someone was singing a song. A deep, glad voice was singing carelessly and happily, but it was singing nonsense. Hey doll, merry doll, ring-a-dong dillo, ring-a-dong, hop along, foul-lell the willow. Tom bomb, jolly Tom, Tom bombadillo. Okay, I totally forgot because I ran into this problem when I've read this out loud. I've tried reading this out loud twice, to my ex-girlfriend Tay and to Red a different time. I think it was Tay. With Red, I got as far as the Fall of Isengard. But I don't have a voice for Tom Bombadil, man. Like, I don't know how to do Tom Bombadil. He's weird. Like, the flippy, like, goofy poetry. And I can't skip it. I can't just skip it. Like, it's important. And I hate when Tolkien does poetry. I just hate it. Are used to the story stopping at the moment of suspense. I'm not sure how much suspense there really is in the moments of suspense in Tolkien. I think that's part of why he works so well, actually. Like, the continuous slight novelty Alexander Pope prescribed as being necessary to the telling of stories is all in the detailing. It's all in the world building. And so the straightforward center of the narrative, the adventure story stuff, is real sort of just expectable old hat. The way he writes about it too, the language, it's really pleasant to read. It's smooth. It's smooth like it's smooth like smooth whiskey, but it's not crazy like absinthe ever. I don't have to sing Tom stuff. I'm gonna have to read it though. Yeah, I mean all the poetry. I'm gonna read all the poetry. Like other times, I've skipped some of the poetry. He's really obsessed with his characters writing poems and communicating in poems and songs. Tom Bombadil particularly, like he actually says things in his poems. Catherine, we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. So I'm not even sure what voice Tom Bombadil should have. I know I can't do it, whatever it is. I can't imagine what voice could say this and make it work. I don't know how other professional readers have dealt with it. I mean, I'd give myself helium voice. Like if I was doing an Audible book recording, I would be like, I'm gonna read it, and then I'm gonna do a second track where I give myself helium voice, like I'm an elf. And then I would put music, some kind of twangly music under it, and that way I would get around the problem. Tom Bomb, Jolly Tom, Tom Bombadillo. Half hopeful and half afraid of some new danger, Frodo and Sam now both stood still. Suddenly, out of a long string of nonsense words, or so they seemed, the voice rose up loud and clear and burst into this song. Hey, come, merry doll, derry doll, my darling. Light goes the weather wind and the feathered starling. Down along under hill, shining in the sunlight, waiting on the doorstep for the cold starlight. There my pretty lady is, river woman's daughter, slender as the willow wand, clearer than the water. Old Tom Bombadil water lilies bringing, comes hopping home again, can you hear him singing? Hey, come merry doll, derry doll, and merry-o, goldberry, goldberry, merry yellow berry-o. Poor old willow man, you tuck your roots away. Tom's in a hurry now, evening will follow day. Okay, that doesn't even line up right. Can't it scan, man? You went to Oxford, yo. I suppose Tolkien would just tell me if it was authentically as old as it's supposed to be pretending to be, it wouldn't necessarily scan right. It's not fucking Ossian. It's supposed to, if it was Ossian, it would scan right, I think, actually. I think that is what I was just saying. I don't really like poetry much at all. I'm probably a pretty good reader for poetry, actually, because I don't like poetry much at all. Poor old willow man, you tuck your roots away. Tom's in a hurry now, evening will follow day. Tom's going home again, water lilies bringing. Hey, come derry doll, can you hear me singing? Frodo and Sam stood as if enchanted. The wind puffed out. The leaves hung silently again on stiff branches. There was another burst of song, and then suddenly, hopping and dancing along the path, there appeared above the reeds an old battered hat with a tall crown and a long blue feather stuck in the band. With another hop and a bound, there came into view a man, or so it seemed. At any rate, he was too large and heavy for a hobbit, if not quite tall enough for one of the big people, though he made noise enough for one, stumping along with great yellow boots on his thick legs and charging through grass and rushes like a cow going down to drink. He had a blue coat and a long brown beard. His eyes were blue and bright, and his face was red as a ripe apple, but creased into 100 wrinkles of laughter. In his hands he carried on a large leaf, as on a tray a small pile of white water lilies. Help! Cried Frodo and Sam, running towards him with their hands stretched out. Whoa, whoa, steady there, cried the old man, holding up one hand, and they stopped short as if they had been struck stiff. Now, my little fellows, where be you a-going to, puffing like a bellows? What's the matter here, then? Do you know who I am? I'm Tom Bombadil. Tell me what's your trouble. Tom's in a hurry now. Don't you crush my lilies. Well, we needed help, man, but now that we've met you, you know what? We're good. We're good. We're good. We're just going to go back to, we're going to help our friend. Nice to meet you, sir. And I realized there was someone else in the woods, and he was just standing there, watching us and smiling. Tom's in a hurry now. Don't you crush my lilies. Oh, I like how, do you see that Zoe's joined the stream in a normal capacity now after I poured water on her head for getting in my lap? You guys couldn't see, but when I poured that little bit of water on top of Zoe's head, she just hunkered down. She still didn't get out of my lap. I still had to put her on the floor. And then she got up over there and I petted her. Poor kitty. I love you, Zoe. One of those mixing boards that'll let you change pitch. I've only wanted to use effects a little bit, but like, yeah, it would be cool. I mean, it'd be cool if I could do like reverb and stuff on the fly for some of the voices for Lord of the Rings. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get to Gollum and Smeagol. One thing about Tolkien is he catches hell for his characters being thinly drawn and their voices being sort of cheaply imagined. Like it's on this like Treasure Island, Wind in the Willows level, the way he imagines characters and dialogue. But reading it out loud, you realize how really etched in stone. I mean, it might be a cheap and tawdry kind of clarity you have for the voices of these characters, but it's real clear. Like, I fall into the rhythm of doing like, you know, the voice for Gandalf, it's in the text. The voice for Frodo, Merry, Pippin, Sam, they all have really distinct ways of talking. Sam's patterns of speech even have that weird, like almost Irish lilt on them. Like, and the old gaffer also, like, he makes it clear where he gets it from. Tom's in a hurry now. Don't you crush my lilies. My friends are caught in the willow tree, cried Frodo breathlessly. Master Merry's being squeezed in a crack, cried Sam. What? Shouted Tom Bombadil, leaping up into the air. Old Man Willow? Not worse than that, eh? That can soon be mended. I know the tune for him. Old Grey Willow Man, I'll freeze his marrow cold if he don't behave himself. I'll sing his roots off. I'll sing a wind up and blow leaf and branch away, Old Man Willow. Setting down his lilies carefully on the grass, he ran to the tree. There he saw Merry's feet still sticking out. The rest had already been drawn further inside. Tom put his mouth to the crack and began singing into it in a low voice. They could not catch the words, but evidently Merry was aroused. His legs began to kick. Tom sprang away and, breaking off a hanging branch, smote the side of the willow with it. You let them out again, Old Man Willow, he said. What be you a-thinking of? You should not be waking. Eat earth, dig deep, drink water, go to sleep. Bombadil is talking. He then seized Merry's feet and drew him out of the suddenly widening crack. There was a tearing creak, and the other crack split open, and out of it Pippin sprang as if he had been kicked. Then with a loud snap, both cracks closed fast again. A shudder ran through the tree from root to tip, and complete silence fell. Thank you, said the hobbits one after the other. Tom Bombadil burst out laughing. Well, my little fellows, said he, stooping so that he peered into their faces, you shall come home with me. The table is all laden with yellow cream, honeycomb, and white bread and butter. Goldberry is waiting. Time enough for questions around the supper table. You follow after me as quick as you are able. With that, he picked up his lilies, and then with a beckoning wave of his hand went hopping and dancing along the path eastward, still singing loudly and nonsensically. I keep thinking, like, while I'm reading this time, what actor would play Tom Bombadil? In the, like, everyone who loves the books complains that the Peter Jackson movies didn't do Tom Bombadil. And I guess he hadn't hooked up with Jack Black yet, but I fear in that dark place in my heart that considers lost movies that possibly should be lost, that's where Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings would have wandered. Jack Black as Tom Bombadil. The 90s, who would it have been, actually? I will never forgive Peter Jackson for refusing to let David Bowie play Elrond. David Bowie offered to take a pay cut to play Elrond, and he said no. The fuck was he thinking? I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear in these streams. Like Tom, I mean, you would need an actor who's got a grip on how to do these line readings, like this thing where it's supposed to be like rhythmic singing magic. I guess you would want a pop star for Tom Bombadil, actually, but it's leading into it too much. Like, yeah, it would be cool if Tom Bombadil and Goldberry were singers for bands, but it kind of wouldn't, actually. It's too on the nose. Never thought about it. Yeah, it's weird that I've never thought about it before, actually. And I've definitely, like I said, 2 other times thought about how hard it is to read his dialogue for me, because I'm just not the right voice for it. Like, I can do most of these characters justice. It's weird how much I can get away with doing Tolkien with my American accent. Like, it should be more of a problem than it is. Right. Too surprised and too relieved to talk, the hobbits followed after him as fast as they could. But that was not fast enough. Tom soon disappeared in front of them, and the noise of his singing got fainter and further away. Suddenly his voice came floating back to them in a loud halloo. Hop along, my little friends, up the withy window. Tom's going on ahead, candles for to kindle. Down west sinks the sun, soon you will be groping. When the night shadows fall, then the door will open. Out of the window panes light will twinkle yellow. Fear no alder black, heed no hoary willow. Fear neither root nor bough, Tom goes on before you. Hey now, merry doll, we'll be waiting for you. After that, the hobbits heard no more. Almost at once, the sun seemed to sink into the trees behind them. They thought of the slanting light of evening glittering on the Brandywine River, and the windows of Bucklebury beginning to gleam with hundreds of lights. Great shadows fell across them. Trunks and branches of trees hung dark and threatening over the path. White mists began to rise and curl on the surface of the river and stray about the roots of the trees upon its borders. Out of the very ground at their feet, a shadowy steam arose and mingled with the swiftly falling dusk. It became difficult to follow the path, and they were very tired. Their legs seemed leaden. Strange furtive noises ran among the bushes and reeds on either side of them, and if they looked up to the pale sky, they caught sight of queer gnarled and knobbly faces that gloomed dark against the twilight and leered down at them from the high bank and the edges of the wood. They began to feel that all this country was unreal, and that they were stumbling through an ominous dream that led to no awakening. Just as they felt their feet slowing down to a standstill, they noticed that the ground was gently rising. The water began to murmur. In the darkness, they caught the white glimmer of foam where the river flowed over a short fall. Then suddenly the trees came to an end and the mists were left behind. They stepped out from the forest and found a wide sweep of grass welling up before them. The river, now small and swift, was leaping merrily down to meet them, glinting here and there in the light of the stars, which were already shining in the sky. The grass under their feet was smooth and short, as if it had been mown or shaven. The eaves of the forest behind were clipped and trim as a hedge. The path was now plain before them, well tended and bordered with stone. It wound up onto the top of a grassy knoll, now gray under the pale starry night. And there, still high above them on a further slope, they saw the twinkling lights of a house. Down again the path went, and then up again, up a long, smooth hillside of turf towards the light. Suddenly a wide yellow beam flowed out brightly from a door that was open. There was Tom Bombadil's house before them, up, down, under hill. Behind it, a steep shoulder of the land lay gray and bare, and beyond that, the dark shapes of the Barrow Downs stalked away into the eastern night. They all hurried forward, hobbits and ponies. Already half their weariness and all their fears had fallen from them. Hey, come merry doll, rolled out the song to greet them. Hey, come merry doll. Hey, come dairy doll, hop along my hearties. Buddy, what are you doing? Zoe, you can't just beat on the window, man. What are you doing? No. The fuck? Yeah, lie down, you little freak. If John Belushi was still alive. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess, yeah, I'd think of him as a fat character actor, right? Like that's I f- I feel like oh, you know who would have been perfect at the right age is Peter Ustinov. Would have been perfect. I'm thinking of the voiceovers he did for animated fantasy movies, and like he did the voice for Watership Down, right? And he did The Winds of Change. Is that what that movie was called? Stocky, yeah. I'm not sure. Like, yeah, I thought of Jack Black, especially because of the Peter Jackson connection. He is exactly the wrong kind of actor that they would use. And yeah, like a pop singer for the girl, Bombadil would seem a little too obvious. Though now that I'm saying that, Bjork, she would have to be Bjork. Okay, so she's Bjork, and he then should be a Euro character actor. Oh my God, could you do Max von Sydow in the 90s? That would be so weird. It'd be weird. It wouldn't work. Also, he's more imposing than Christopher Lee or what's his name who played Gandalf. Alec Guinness was dead, huh? It can't be Alec Guinness. Also, that's lightning striking twice. You can't use Alec Guinness. It's somebody else like that, though. Somebody who's old and kind of retired. Burt Reynolds. Oh, you know what? Donald Sutherland, maybe. No. The Peter Jackson, not Peter Jackson, the John Borman, Rospo Pallenberg Lord of the Rings that never got made. John Borman and Rospo Pallenberg, when they made Excalibur, which is the definitive King Arthur movie, if you guys haven't seen it, in 1981, they first wanted to do Lord of the Rings. And they had a script and a proposal, but the special effects were too expensive and they couldn't get it financed. But their idea was Donald Sutherland as Gandalf, which I think is perfect, is more perfect than that. Because the guy, I don't know why his name is escaping me, the guy who played Gandalf in this, Ian McKellen, he's too on the nose. It's just, he's not threatening enough. It's too obvious. Yeah, Goldberry's easier to cast Gandalf because she just has to be interesting and exotic, and she gets moments, but she's mostly moving around in the background being interesting. Like she's a wife character, for sure. But yeah, she's easy to cast. Why is Tom Bombadil so impossible? I assume Peter Jackson never even got as far as considering casting these characters because it's such a sidebar. Like if you're reading Fellowship of the Ring and breaking it down to make a popular mainstream big budget movie of it that you want to finance sequels to, you would just throw out Tom Bombadil. Like I would have done the same thing. They must have had conversations about casting though, because we're doing it now. The girl that played Zev in Lex, I never watched Lex. I heard that show was really good, but I've never watched it. I got one page till the end of the chapter. It's really like one more poem. I tempted to read some more. I have been on for a while. I feel that definitely like the algorithm makes sure more randos know I'm doing this when I push past to hour 15. Like when I push past to hour 15, hour 20, the number of viewers crawls up. I feel like if I push to an hour 40 or 2 hours, that will happen even more. Of course, then like some of you guys, like Gandalf, you actually hang out here the whole time. I don't know if you want me to go for 2 hours, and I don't know when I run out of breath. Like I've been interrupting more this time, so um, yeah, I've heard Lex is really good from a bunch of people. It's been a while. Hey, come dairy doll, hop along my hearties. Hobbits, ponies all, we are fond of parties. Now let the fun begin, let us sing together. Then another clear voice, as young and as ancient as spring, like the song of a glad water flowing down into the night from a bright morning in the hills, came falling like silver to meet them. Now let the song begin, let us sing together, of sun, stars, moon, and mist, rain, and cloudy weather. Light on the budding leaf, dew on the feather, wind on the open hill, bells on the heather, reeds by the shady pool, lilies on the water, old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. And with that song the hobbits stood upon the threshold, and a golden light was all about them. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go a few more minutes. I really, I don't know how I feel about the whole Tom Bombadil episode. Really, just feel so awkward doing his voice. It's too whimsical for me. Like as a reader, it's too whimsical. But it's late. I've been reading a while. I feel whimsical. I feel like if I'm gonna stick to a schedule where I'm coming in here at 9 after work and I'm coming in here at the earliest at 8. Hello, Pie Wacket. Where did you just come from? I can read longer. I don't know if it's true. May not be true. Pie Wacket, how are you? Yeah. See, 5 people coming in here. It's hi everybody. I'm gonna get back to. We are now at the beginning of chapter 7. You guys are just in time. The 3 people who just came in. In the house of Tom Bombadil, the 4 hobbits stepped over the wide stone threshold and stood still, blinking. They were in a long, low room, filled with the light of lamps swinging from the beams of the roof, and on the table of dark polished wood stood many candles, tall and yellow, burning brightly. In a chair at the far side of the room, facing the outer door, sat a woman. Her long yellow hair rippled down her shoulders. Her gown was green, green as young reeds, shot with silver like beads of dew. And her belt was of gold, shaped like a chain of flag lilies set with the pale blue eyes of forget-me-nots. About her feet, in wide vessels of green and brown earthenware, white water lilies were floating, so that she seemed to be enthroned in the midst of a pool. "Enter, good guests," she said, and as she spoke they knew that it was her clear voice they had heard singing. They came a few timid steps further into the room and began to bow low, feeling strangely surprised and awkward, like folk that, knocking at a cottage door to beg for a drink of water, have been answered by a fair young elf queen clad in living flowers. But before they could say anything, she sprang lightly up and over the lily bowls, and ran laughing towards them, and as she ran her gown rustled softly like the wind in the flowering borders of a river. "Come, dear folk," she said, taking Frodo by the hand. "Laugh and be merry. I am Goldberry, daughter of the river." Then lightly she passed them, and closing the door, she turned her back to it, with her white arms spread out across it. "Let us shut out the night," she said. "For you are still afraid, perhaps, of mist and tree shadows and deep water and untamed things. Fear nothing, for tonight you are under the roof of Tom Bombadil." Okay, why am I better at her voice than his voice? Like, I'm good at her voice. I've got that. That's surprising. That is odd. Um, I didn't know I was going to do that like that. I'm going to take another hit off the pipe. Lucy, if you were going to pay me $1,000 to do something, you might want to come up with something a little more involved and interesting than just a reaction. I'm not, I don't want to set anyone's mind to working. We try to stay stupid around here, not creative. Nobody around here is creative. Hey, thank you, OC Iron Terry Cryptid Investigating 10. Thank you. If you guys are new in here, I try not to get distracted off topic with the chat too much, but I won't ignore people. Like, if you comment off topic, I might ignore it. If you keep commenting off topic, if you guys engage in talking about Tolkien, like if you give me an excuse to annotate and interrupt, I'll do that. Where was I? Right. For tonight you are under the roof of Tom Bombadil. The hobbits looked at her in wonder, and she looked at each of them and smiled. "Fair Lady Goldberry," said Frodo at last, feeling his heart moved with a joy that he did not understand. He stood as he had at times stood, enchanted by fair elven voices, but the spell that was now laid upon him was different. Less keen and lofty was the delight, but deeper and nearer to mortal heart, marvelous and yet not strange. "Fair Lady Goldberry," he said again, "now the joy that was hidden in the songs we heard is made plain to me. O slender as a willow wand, O clearer than clear water, O reed by the living pool, fair river daughter, O springtime and summertime and spring again after, O wind on the waterfall and the leaves' laughter." Suddenly he stopped and stammered, overcome with surprise to hear himself saying such things, but Goldberry laughed. "Welcome," she said. "I had not heard that folk of the Shire were so sweet-tongued, but I see that you are an elf friend. The light in your eyes and the ring in your voice tells it. This is a merry meeting. Sit now and wait for the master of the house. He will not be long. He is tending your tired beasts." Oh my God. My phone keeps telling me I don't. Somebody's texting me something, asking if I'm doing the thing. I don't know. I'm busy doing the thing. Um, where was I? Um, right. He is tending your tired beasts. The hobbits sat down gladly in low rush-seated chairs, while Goldberry busied herself about the table, and their eyes followed her, for the slender grace of her movement filled them with quiet delight. From somewhere behind the house came the sound of singing. Every now and again they caught, among many a dairy doll and a merry doll and a ring-a-ding-dillo, the repeated words, "Old Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow, bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow." Wait, oh, right, he's tending the horses, right? I thought they came in together. Oh, right, he lost them in the woods. They were lagging behind. No, I'm fine. I was right here. I'm fine. I'm not high enough to forget that. See, I remembered. Took me a second. It was like 4 pages ago. I mean, it's been a while. "Fair lady," said Frodo again after a while, "tell me, if my asking does not seem foolish, who is Tom Bombadil?" "He is," said Goldberry, staying her swift movements and smiling. Frodo looked at her questioningly. "He is, as you have seen him," she said in answer to his look. "He is the master of wood, water, and hill." "Then all this strange land belongs to him?" "No, indeed," she answered, and her smile faded. "That would indeed be a burden," she added in a low voice, as if to herself. "The trees and the grasses and all things growing or living in the land belong each to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom walking in the forest, wading in the water, leaping on the hilltops under light and shadow. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master." A door opened, and in came Tom Bombadil. He had now no hat, and his thick brown hair was crowned with autumn leaves. He laughed, and going to Goldberry, took her hand. "Here's my pretty lady," he said, bowing to the hobbits. "Here's my Goldberry, clothed all in silver green, with flowers in her girdle. Is the table laden? I see yellow cream and honeycomb and white bread and butter, milk, cheese, and green herbs and ripe berries gathered. Is that enough for us? Is the supper ready?" I was going to be like, is he okay? Is he all right? "It is," said Goldberry, "but the guests perhaps are not." Tom clapped his hands and cried, "Tom, Tom, your guests are tired, and you had near forgotten. Come now, my merry friends, and Tom will refresh you. You shall clean grimy hands and wash your weary faces, cast off your muddy cloaks and comb out your tangles." He opened the door, and they followed him down a short passage and round a sharp turn. They came to a low room with a sloping roof, a penthouse, it seemed, built onto the north end of the house. Its walls were of clean stone, but they were mostly covered with green hanging mats and yellow curtains. The floor was flagged and strewn with fresh green rushes. There were 4 deep mattresses, each piled with white blankets, laid on the floor along one side. Against the opposite wall was a long bench laden with wide earthenware basins, and beside it stood brown ewers filled with water, some cold, some steaming hot. There were soft green slippers set ready beside each bed. Yeah, I'm going to read one more little section. Thanks for being here, guys. Again, I invite you to contribute through the dono button. YouTube splits that money with me, or send us money at PayPal. That is me and my cats Pie and Zoe. We're raising money to move. We're almost there. We don't have a clear place to move to yet, but we're almost where we need to be with the money. All right, I'm going to read one more little passage. I'm going to stop in the middle of the chapter called "In the House of Tom Bombadil" and pick up tomorrow. Night. I'll see you guys then. Thanks a lot for being here. Before long, washed and refreshed, the hobbits were seated at the table, 2 on each side, while at either end sat Goldberry and the master. It was a long and merry meal. Though the hobbits ate as only famished hobbits can eat, there was no lack. The drink in their drinking bowls seemed to be clear cold water, yet it went to their hearts like wine and set free their voices. The guests became suddenly aware that they were singing merrily, as if it was easier and more natural than talking. At last Tom and Goldberry rose and cleared the table swiftly. The guests were commanded to sit quiet and were set in chairs, each with a footstool to his tired feet. There was a fire in the wide hearth before them, and it was burning with a sweet smell, as if it were built of apple wood. When everything was set in order, all the lights in the room were put out, except one lamp and a pair of candles at each end of the chimney shelf. Then Goldberry came and stood before them, holding a candle, and she wished them each a good night and deep sleep. Have peace now, she said, until the morning. Heed no nightly noises, for nothing passes door and window here save moonlight and starlight and the wind off the hilltop. Good night. She passed out of the room with a glimmer and a rustle. The sound of her footsteps was like a stream falling gently away downhill over cool stones in the quiet of night. Tom sat on a while beside them in silence, while each of them tried to muster the courage to ask one of the many questions he had meant to ask at supper. Sleep gathered on their eyelids. At last Frodo spoke. "Did you hear me calling, Master, or was it just chance that brought you at that moment?" Tom stirred like a man shaken out of a pleasant dream. "Eh? What?" said he. "Did I hear you calling?" "Nay, I did not hear. I was busy singing. Just chance brought me then, if chance you call it. It was no plan of mine, though I was waiting for you. We heard news of you and learned that you were wandering. We guessed you'd come ere long down to the water. All paths lead that way, down to Withywindle. Old Grey Willow Man, he's a mighty singer, and it's hard for little folk to escape his cunning mazes. But Tom had an errand there that he dared not hinder." Tom nodded as if sleep was taking him again, but he went on in a soft singing voice. "I had an errand there, gathering water lilies, green leaves and lilies white, to please my pretty lady. The last ere the year's end, to keep them from the winter, to flower by her pretty feet till the snows are melted. Each year at summer's end I go to find them for her, in a wide pool, deep and clear, far down Withywindle. There they open first in spring, and there they linger latest. By that pool long ago I found the river daughter, fair young Goldberry, sitting in the rushes. Sweet was her singing then, and her heart was beating." He opened his eyes and looked at them with a sudden glint of blue. "And that proved well for you, for now I shall no longer go down deep again along the forest water, not while the year is old, nor shall I be passing Old Man Willow's house this side of springtime, not till the merry spring, when the river daughter dances down the Withy path to bathe in the water." He fell silent again, but Frodo could not help asking one more question, the one he most desired to have answered. "Tell us, Master," he said, "about the Willow Man. What is he? I have never heard of him before." "No, don't," said Merry and Pippin together, sitting suddenly upright. "Not now, not until the morning." "That is right," said the old man. "Now is the time for resting. Some things are ill to hear when the world's in shadow. Sleep till the morning light, rest on the pillow. Heed no nightly noise, fear no grey willow." And with that he took down the lamp and blew it out, and grasping a candle in either hand, he led them out of the room. Their mattresses and pillows were soft as down, and the blankets were of white wool. They had hardly laid themselves on the deep beds and drawn the light covers over them before they were asleep. All right, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for being here. It's been fun. It's always fun.